Western feminism taught you to fight like men. Eastern philosophy will teach you to win like women. And the difference? Men might respect your strength, but they'll never see your strategy coming. Let me be direct with you. Everything Western feminism taught you about power is incomplete. Not wrong, incomplete. They gave you half the playbook and expected you to compete in the full game. Speak up, lean in, demand your seat at the table, assert yourself, set boundaries loudly. And what happened? You tried it. You spoke up in that meeting and suddenly you're aggressive. You set a boundary with that man and now you're difficult. You advocated for yourself at work and the whispers started. Too ambitious, too intense, too much. You're exhausted. Not because you're weak, but because you've been using masculine strategies in a feminine game. And here's what nobody told you. There's an entire philosophical tradition, 2,500 years old, billions of people, civilizations built on its principles, that validates what you've always suspected. Subtle influence isn't weakness, it's superiority. Only 3% of Western women ever discover this Eastern alternative. You're about to become one of them. His name was Confucius. And before you dismiss this as ancient history irrelevant to your modern life, understand this. 551 BCE, China, the spring and autumn period. Not some peaceful philosophical retreat, absolute chaos. Warlords massacring each other's armies, dynasties collapsing overnight, political intrigue where one wrong word to the wrong ruler meant execution by sunrise. In that world, a man with no inherited power, no military backing, no political office, shaped the next 2.5 millennia of human civilization, not through force, through influence, through relationships, through strategic positioning so sophisticated that emperors sought his wisdom and scholars studied his methods for over 2,000 years. Confucius lived in an era where direct confrontation meant death. He mastered influence. You live in an era where female confrontation means social penalty. His strategies translate perfectly. Think about that for a moment. Western culture taught you that subtle influence is manipulation, something to be ashamed of, something weak women do when they can't be direct. Eastern philosophy taught emperors that subtle influence is wisdom, the highest form of power, the kind of power that doesn't announce itself, doesn't demand recognition, doesn't exhaust you performing strength. It simply positions and wins. Who do you think understood power better? The culture that's been teaching women to apologize for their ambition, or the civilization that built governance systems on relational mastery? For 2,500 years, Confucian philosophy shaped the world's most populous civilizations. The Chinese civil service exams, the pathway to political power, tested knowledge of Confucius for over 13 centuries. Not military strategy, not brute force tactics, Confucian relationship mechanics. If you wanted power in imperial China, you studied how to influence through positioning, through cultivated relationships, through what Confucius called Li, ritual propriety, and Ren, human connectedness. It's time Western women stopped dismissing what they don't understand. Here's what's happening in this video. By the end, you'll understand the 3-layer influence system Confucius taught that Western culture completely misses. Not theory, practical strategy. The kind you can implement tomorrow in your relationship, your workplace, your life. You're going to learn the one Confucian concept that makes men perceive you as higher status without you saying a single word. And you're going to discover why the most powerful women throughout history, empresses, political advisors, cultural architects, used these exact principles whether they knew they were Confucian or not. If you've always felt that aggressive empowerment doesn't fit you, you're about to discover why. It's not you, it's the strategy. You've been trying to win a chess game using checkers rules. Eastern philosophy is about to teach you the actual board. Because here's the truth that makes Western feminists uncomfortable. Men and women face different social consequences for the same behaviors. That's not opinion, that's verified research. Women who display assertiveness face what researchers call the likability penalty. The more competent and ambitious you appear, the less likable you're perceived to be. Men don't face this trade-off. For them, competence increases likability. For you, it's a zero-sum game, unless you change the game entirely. Confucian philosophy doesn't ask you to be less ambitious. It asks you to be more strategic. It validates what you already know intuitively, that relational intelligence isn't inferior to direct assertion. It's superior. In Confucian thought, the Junzi, the superior person, and yes, that's gender neutral, achieves influence through self-cultivation, strategic positioning, and relationship mastery, not through demanding recognition, through becoming undeniable. Western philosophy gave you individual rights. Eastern philosophy gave you relational power. Both matter, but only one gives you influence without social cost. But before you can understand why Confucian influence works where Western assertiveness fails, you need to see exactly how your current approach is sabotaging your power.
Let me guess. You've tried speaking up. You've tried setting boundaries. You've tried leaning in. And somehow, you're still not getting the respect, the promotion, the relationship dynamic you want. Worse, you're getting labeled aggressive, difficult, too much. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That meeting last month, you prepared your points meticulously. You waited for the right moment. You spoke clearly, confidently, backed by data. And then, that look, the slight lean back, the eye roll, someone thought you didn't catch. The senior colleague who interrupts mid-sentence to build on what you're saying by saying the exact same thing you just said. Suddenly, he's insightful. You were aggressive. Or that moment with your partner. You set a boundary, calmly, clearly, reasonably. I need you to follow through when you commit to something. Direct communication, right? Exactly what every relationship book told you to do. And instead of respect, you got defensiveness. You're always criticizing me. Why are you so controlling? I can't do anything right for you. Now you're the problem. You asked for basic consideration and somehow became the unreasonable one. Maybe you thought it was your delivery, your tone, your timing. Maybe if you'd said it differently, softer, stronger, with more confidence, with less edge, maybe then it would have worked. So you tried again, adjusted your approach, calculated every word, and still the same result. Because here's what nobody told you. It wasn't you. It was never you. There are 3 specific situations where Western assertiveness destroys female credibility. I'm about to show you all 3. First, the workplace competence penalty. 2021 McKinsey Women in the Workplace study. 73% of female executives report being penalized for behavior that's rewarded in men. Not anecdotal, not your imagination, systematic. You advocate for your ideas, you're aggressive. He does it, he's a leader. You negotiate your salary, you're difficult. He does it, he's ambitious. You correct an error in the presentation, you're nitpicking. He does it, he's detail-oriented. Same behavior, opposite social consequence. Harvard researchers documented this as the competence-likability trade-off for women. The more competent and ambitious you appear, the less likable you're perceived to be. For men, competence increases likability. For you, it's a zero-sum game. You can be liked or you can be respected, but Western workplace culture makes it nearly impossible to be both, unless you're performing an exhausting tightrope walk every single day, confident but not threatening, assertive but not aggressive, ambitious but not too ambitious. You're tired of calculating how to say things, how to package your competence in ways that don't trigger male insecurity or female judgment, how to be strong without being threatening, how to lead without seeming bossy. The code switching is exhausting because you're translating your natural communication through 3 different filters before it reaches your mouth. And even then, it fails half the time. Second situation, relationship boundary rejection. You set clear boundaries, textbook direct communication. I won't accept being spoken to that way. I need equal partnership and household responsibilities. I expect emotional availability, not just financial provision. Reasonable, clear, direct. And what happens is defensiveness, gaslighting. You're too sensitive, you're too demanding, you're never satisfied. Suddenly, having standards makes you the problem. Here's why. Direct confrontation triggers male defensiveness because it threatens status. Western relationship advice tells you to communicate directly, but it doesn't account for the fact that men hear direct critique as status challenge. So your boundary, which should have created respect, creates resistance. He doesn't think she knows what she deserves. He thinks she's attacking me. Your directness, filtered through his socialization, becomes an attack to defend against, not wisdom to respect. Third situation, social double-bind navigation. Your mother told you to be nice. Your career coach told you to be assertive. Your therapist told you to have boundaries. Your partner wants you confident but not intimidating. Your workplace wants you ambitious but collaborative. Your friends want you successful but still available. You're caught in the middle, performing different versions of yourself depending on the room, and none of them feel authentic because you're code switching constantly between contradictory expectations. If you've experienced this, drop a comment. I guarantee 90% of you have the same story, because this isn't individual failure. This is systemic strategy mismatch. Here's the trap Western empowerment created. It teaches you to reject traditional femininity, the people-pleasing, the accommodation, the subtle influence. Good, that needed rejection. But then it doesn't teach you what actually works when you do reject it. It just imports masculine strategies, direct assertion, explicit boundary setting, loud advocacy, and expects them to work the same for you as they do for men. They don't. Masculine strategies work in masculine social contexts. When men assert dominance, other men recognize the game and respond accordingly, either submit or compete. That's their social operating system. When you assert the same way, you're not playing their game on equal terms. You're triggering a different response entirely. Threat to social order, woman stepping out of expected role, must be corrected through social penalty, dismissed, labeled, ostracized. You're not failing at Western empowerment. Western empowerment is failing you. But what if the problem isn't you? What if you've been using a male strategy in a female situation? What if there's an entirely different approach, one that doesn't require you to perform masculinity, doesn't trigger social penalties, doesn't exhaust you with constant code switching? What if the most powerful female leaders in history, empresses who shaped dynasties, political advisors who guided emperors, cultural architects who influenced entire civilizations, used completely different methods? Methods that Western feminism doesn't even have language for. Because here's what Western culture won't tell you. Subtle influence isn't weakness. Strategic positioning isn't manipulation. Relational power isn't inferiority. Eastern philosophy understood this 2,500 years ago. Confucius built an entire system on it. He lived in an era where direct confrontation failed, where brute force was stupid, where the people who survived and thrived mastered influence, positioning, and relation cultivation. Sound familiar? Western philosophy gave you individual rights and direct assertion. Eastern philosophy gave you relational harmony and strategic influence. Both have value, but only one works when the system penalizes your directness. So if Western approaches keep failing you, what did Confucius understand about influence that Harvard Business School doesn't teach? And why did Eastern cultures build entire civilizations on principles Western feminism dismisses?
Confucius never held significant political office. He never commanded armies. He never inherited power. Yet his influence shaped Chinese civilization for 2,500 years and counting. How? He mastered the one thing Western philosophy undervalues: relational power. 551 BCE, the spring and autumn period, in ancient China. Imagine a world dissolving into chaos, the Zhou dynasty collapsing, regional warlords carving up territory, violence everywhere, political assassinations, betrayals, military coups. This wasn't some peaceful philosophical golden age. This was survival of the strongest brutality. And into this world was born Confucius, the man we know as Confucius. He wasn't born into power. Minor nobility, yes, but his father died when he was 3. His mother raised him in poverty. No inherited political position, no military backing, no wealthy patron securing his future. He was self-educated, obsessively so. He studied the ancient texts, mastered ritual, learned music, practiced archery. Not because these skills gave him authority, but because he understood something profound. Competence creates credibility. Excellence creates influence. He wasn't born powerful. He built influence from scratch, just like you're about to. By his 30s, Confucius was teaching. Not in some prestigious academy, he took students wherever he found them. Rich, poor, didn't matter. If you wanted to learn, he taught you. And what was he teaching? Not abstract metaphysics, not theoretical philosophy disconnected from reality. He taught relationship mechanics. How to navigate social hierarchies, how to cultivate moral authority, how to influence without force. Practical wisdom for surviving and thriving in a chaotic world where direct confrontation got you killed. His students didn't just learn philosophy, they became advisors to kings, governors, ministers. They entered the courts of the very warlords tearing China apart, and they influenced policy through strategic positioning, through understanding human nature, through relational cultivation. When chaos surrounded him, warlords, collapsing dynasties, violence, Confucius didn't pick up a sword. He taught relationships, and his students shaped kingdoms. Here's what matters. Confucius created an influence system so effective that it became the foundation of Chinese governance for over 2 millennia. The Chinese civil service exams, the pathway to political power and administrative authority, tested knowledge of the Analects for 1,300 years. Not military strategy, not economic theory. Confucian influence mechanics. If you wanted power in imperial China, you studied Confucius, you memorized his teachings on the Junzi, the superior person, you mastered Li, ritual propriety and strategic positioning, you cultivated Ren, humanness and relational connection. That was your ticket to authority. 2,500 years, billions of people, entire civilizations structured on his teachings. Let that sink in. This isn't some obscure historical footnote. This is civilizational scale validation that relational influence works. And it worked precisely because it didn't rely on force. The Analects, his collected teachings, compiled by his disciples after his death, isn't abstract philosophy. It's a handbook. Short, practical conversations. A student asks a question. Confucius responds with direct wisdom. The superior person understands righteousness. The inferior person understands profit. When you see a worthy person, think of equaling them. When you see an unworthy person, reflect on your own conduct. Direct, practical, immediately applicable. This is relationship strategy disguised as moral philosophy. Western philosophy gave you Plato's forms, perfect ideals existing in some metaphysical realm, Descartes' mind-body split, Kant's categorical imperatives. Brilliant, abstract, intellectually impressive. Eastern philosophy gave you relationship mechanics that actually govern human behavior. How to position yourself in social hierarchies. How to cultivate influence through self-improvement. How to read social contexts and navigate them strategically.
Which is more useful when you're trying to gain respect in your relationship or credibility in your workplace? Here's the key distinction. Western philosophy prioritizes individual rights, your autonomy, your freedom, your voice. Eastern Confucian philosophy prioritizes relational harmony, your positioning within networks, your strategic influence, your cultivation of connections. Both are valid, both matter, but they're solving different problems. Western philosophy tells you what you deserve. Confucian relationship philosophy tells you how to get it without triggering the social penalties we just discussed. And here's what makes Confucius particularly relevant for you. His concept of the junzi, the superior person, is completely gender-neutral in Chinese. It's not superior man, it's superior person. Excellence in his system transcends gender. The junzi cultivates moral character, intellectual depth, strategic wisdom, and relational skill. That's the standard. Not your biological sex, not your inherited status, your cultivation, your competence, your character. This is meritocratic empowerment. You don't need formal authority to become a junzi. You need self-discipline, education, moral development, and strategic intelligence. Confucius himself proved it. He had no inherited power and became one of history's most influential figures. His students had no armies and shaped dynasties. His philosophy had no military enforcement and governed civilizations. He taught a bottom-up power model. Change yourself first. Through self-cultivation, you influence your immediate relationships, your family. Through family influence, you impact.
Confucian influence operates on 3 levels. Most women never get past level 1. The 3% who master all 3, they don't just succeed, they become untouchable. Here's the system Confucius created 2,500 years ago that still governs human behavior today. 3 tiers. Each builds on the previous. And here's what's crucial. Don't skip to tier 3. Without tier 1, tier 3 becomes manipulation and fails. Without tier 2, tier 3 exhausts you. This is sequential mastery. Let me show you exactly how it works. Tier 1. Junzi, superior person development. The foundation. Everything starts here. Junzi, the superior person, is Confucian self-cultivation, moral development, intellectual growth, skill mastery, character refinement. This isn't self-help affirmations. This is becoming so undeniably competent, so intellectually formidable, so morally grounded that your presence commands respect without you demanding it. Confucius said, the superior person is distressed by their own lack of ability, not by others' lack of recognition. Read that again. You stop worrying about who's noticing you and focus on becoming worth noticing. Most women are constantly seeking external validation. Does he see my worth? Does my boss recognize my contributions? Does she appreciate what I did? Junzi women don't ask those questions. They're too busy cultivating excellence. Modern translation. Become so skilled they can't ignore you, so principled they can't dismiss you. This is competence as power foundation, not claimed competence, demonstrated competence, irreplaceable competence. Workplace application. Instead of walking into your manager's office saying, I deserve this promotion, you become the person they can't run the project without. See the difference? One is claim, one is reality. Claims require defense. Reality defends itself. When you're the only person who understands that client relationship, who can troubleshoot that system, who has cultivated that specific expertise, you don't negotiate for power. You already have it. Relationship application. Stop trying to prove your worth to partners. Cultivate a life so rich they fear losing access to it. Most women chase. Junzi women build. You develop your career, your friendships, your intellectual interests, your physical health, your emotional depth, your community connections. You become a whole ecosystem. He's not dating a woman desperate for his validation. He's gaining access to an entire world. That's Junzi attraction. You're not pursuing, you're cultivating, and cultivation creates scarcity. This is the tier that protects you from desperation. When you've built genuine excellence, professional competence, intellectual depth, moral character, personal richness, you stop needing any single person or position to validate you. That internal security is visible, people feel it, and they respond to it. Tier 2, Li, strategic positioning through propriety. Now we get sophisticated. Li is ritual propriety.
understanding social expectations, cultural rituals, unwritten rules, and using them strategically. This is where Western feminism gets uncomfortable, but stay with me, because this is where power multiplies. Most women think rejecting femininity equals power. Cut your hair short, speak like men, reject anything coded as feminine. Confucian women understand something deeper. Social expectations aren't prison bars if you understand the mechanics. They're tools. You can use female communication styles while executing male ambition. You can appear to conform while strategically positioning for influence. Li in action. Ask questions instead of making statements. Sounds submissive, right? It's not. It's Socratic method. It's Confucian-compatible strategic inquiry. In meetings, when a colleague proposes something flawed, you have two options. Direct challenge. I disagree with that approach because XYZ. You're right. You're also now labeled aggressive, difficult, not a team player. Or strategic inquiry. Help me understand how that approach handles X scenario. I'm curious about your thinking on Y. What happens when we encounter Z? Same goal, exposing the flaw, different social cost. With direct challenge, you're the problem. With strategic inquiry, men think they're teaching you. They're actually talking themselves into recognizing the problem, while you gather intelligence about their reasoning, their blind spots, their egos. And here's the beautiful part. When they discover the flaw through your questions, they think they figured it out. They're invested in the solution now. You got exactly what you wanted, the flawed approach rejected, without triggering defensive resistance. That's Li mastery, playing the game better than those who made the rules. Confucius said, the superior person is modest in speech, but exceeds in actions. Workplace translation, under-promise, over-deliver. Relationship translation, when he disappoints you, silence speaks louder than criticism. Most women immediately confront, you said you'd do this and you didn't, and trigger defensiveness. Li's strategic women withdraw. Not passive-aggressive withdrawal, strategic absence. You stop initiating, you become less available, you redirect your energy elsewhere. He notices, and in that space, he reflects instead of defends. Your silence created what your criticism couldn't, his own recognition of failure. This is using social mechanics strategically. You're not performing weakness, you're positioning for influence. There's a massive difference. Tier 3, Ren. Relational cultivation as infrastructure. The pinnacle. Ren means humaneness, connectedness, relational depth. This is where women have natural advantage that Western culture taught you to dismiss. Your relational intelligence isn't emotional weakness. It's strategic infrastructure. Ren cultivation. You're not networking in that shallow transactional sense. You're building genuine long-term relationships that naturally create obligation, loyalty, reciprocity, and information flow. This takes years. It's also unstoppable once established. Modern translation. Build a network so strong they need you more than you need them. Not through dominance, through generosity, through connection, through becoming central to other people's success. Workplace example. Become the person who connects others. You introduce colleagues who should collaborate. You share credit generously. You celebrate others' wins publicly. You build a reputation as generous collaborator, as connector, as the person who makes things happen for people. What are you actually doing? You're becoming infrastructure, and infrastructure has power. People seek your advice. Your endorsement matters. Your introduction opens doors. You didn't demand this influence. You cultivated relationships until influence was inevitable. Think about the most influential woman you know. I guarantee she uses Tier 2, whether she knows it or not, and I absolutely guarantee she's built REN, relational infrastructure, that makes her indispensable. Relationship ecosystem. You're not chasing one man. You've built a life rich with family, friendships, community involvement, purpose. You have REN, connectedness, multiple sources of meaning and support. Scarcity mindset disappears. You're not thinking, I need him to be happy. You're thinking, my life is full. He'd be fortunate to be part of it. That shift is everything. It changes your energy, your choices, your boundaries. It makes you selective instead of desperate. And selectivity is attractive. This is authentic relationship cultivation, REN, not exhausting emotional labor. Emotional labor is one-sided caretaking that depletes you. REN is reciprocal cultivation that enriches everyone involved. Know the difference. Integration, the complete system. Here's how all three work together. Junzi makes you respectable, Li makes you strategic, Ren makes you indispensable. Most women have pieces. Maybe you've cultivated competence but you're too direct, triggering backlash. Maybe you're strategic but feel isolated. Maybe you're great at relationships but lack core competence. You're about to integrate all three. Western approach to power. Demand respect, face backlash, wonder what went wrong, try harder, Face more resistance, burn out. Confucian approach to power. Cultivate excellence through Junzi development. Position strategically through Li mastery. Build relationships through Ren cultivation. Watch influence become inevitable. One is exhausting, one is sustainable. And here's the beauty. It doesn't look like power seeking. It looks like wisdom. It looks like maturity. It looks like character development. And that's exactly why it works for women where obvious ambition fails. You're not threatening the system. You're becoming so valuable within it that the system reorganizes around you. Pause here. Which tier is your weakest? That's your growth edge. If you're competent but constantly triggering backlash, Tier 2 needs work. If you're strategic but feel isolated, Tier 3 needs cultivation. If you're well-connected but lack core competence, Tier 1 is your foundation to build. All three tiers, sequential mastery, ancient wisdom, modern application. This is how you win without fighting. This is Confucian female power. You now have the philosophical framework, but philosophy without implementation is just intellectual entertainment. Let me show you exactly how to activate this in your life starting tomorrow. Section 5. Philosophy is useless until it's practiced. Here's your 30-day Confucian influence implementation system. Start tomorrow, track results weekly, thank me in a month. Every day you delay, you're using strategies that exhaust you, strategies that trigger backlash, strategies that make you perform different versions of yourself depending on the room. This ends now. Screenshot this section, check off each weekly goal. Visual progress builds momentum, and comment your Tier 1 focus area below. Let's build accountability together. Here's how this works. 30 days, 3 tiers, sequential integration. You don't need to master this immediately. Confucius took 50 years to develop his wisdom. You can take 30 days to start. This is cultivation, not instant transformation. Eastern philosophy values patience and long-term development. Western culture wants results by Friday. You're choosing the path that actually works. Confucius said, by 3 methods we may learn wisdom: reflection, imitation, and experience. That's Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. You're about to live all 3. Week 1 through 2, Junzi Foundation, building excellence. Daily practice, 30 minutes of focused skill development in your field. No social media, no distractions, just deliberate competence building. If you're in marketing, study consumer psychology. If you're in management, study leadership case studies. If you're building a relationship, study emotional intelligence and attachment theory. Build undeniable competence. This isn't about credentials. It's about becoming genuinely formidable in your domain. Evening reflection. Every night, write down 3 actions you took today that aligned with your values. Not what you wished you'd done, what you actually did. Confucian Junzi tracks moral consistency. This practice builds self-awareness and reveals the gap between who you say you are and how you actually behave. That gap is where growth happens. Workplace application. Stop self-promoting this week completely. Case studies. If you're building a relationship, study emotional intelligence and attachment theory. Build undeniable competence. This isn't about credentials. It's about becoming genuinely formidable in your domain. Evening reflection. Every night, write down 3 actions you took today that aligned with your values. Not what you wish you'd done, what you actually did. Confucian Junzi tracks moral consistency. This practice builds self-awareness and reveals the gap between who you say you are and how you actually behave. That gap is where growth happens. Workplace application? Stop self-promoting this week completely. No, I did this in meetings. No reminding your manager of your contributions. Just do exceptional work and watch who notices. You're testing something crucial. Is your competence visible without your announcement? If it is, you have Junzi Foundation. If it isn't, your work quality needs improvement before strategy matters. Reality first, then positioning. Relationship application? Stop trying to prove your worth to anyone, partners, friends, family. For 2 weeks, redirect that energy into building your own life richness. Sign up for that class, reconnect with that friend, start that project. Cultivate yourself. Watch how people respond when you stop seeking their validation and start generating your own value. You'll know Tier 1 is working when people start asking your opinion more. When your confidence feels internal, not external. When you stop checking if people noticed what you did because you're too focused on doing it well. Week 2 through 3, Li's strategic positioning, understanding social mechanics. Observation exercise. In every meeting, every social interaction, note the patterns. Who interrupts? Who defers? What language gets heard versus ignored? Who asks questions versus makes statements? Map the social ritual. You're not judging, you're studying. Lee mastery starts with seeing what's actually happening, not what you wish was happening. Communication shift. For 1 week, eliminate I think and I believe from your workplace vocabulary. Replace with I'm curious about and help me understand. Replace statements with strategic questions. This will feel unnatural at first. That discomfort is your conditioning saying women should be direct. Push through. Watch what happens when you position as curious inquirer instead of assertive expert. You'll be shocked how much more influence you gain. Feeling strategic feels uncomfortable at first. That's conditioning, not morality. You've been taught that strategy equals manipulation. Confucius taught leaders that strategy rooted in moral character is virtue. Choose the philosopher over the patriarchy. Workplace scenario. Your colleague proposes something flawed. Old approach. That won't work because XYZ. New Lee approach. I'm curious how that handles the client's budget concerns. What happens if timeline shifts? Help me understand the risk mitigation. Same goal, different social cost. Track the difference in reception. Relationship application. When conflict arises, practice strategic silence instead of immediate response. Your partner disappoints you. Old approach, immediate confrontation and criticism. New Lee approach, strategic withdrawal. You don't engage, you don't criticize, you redirect your energy. Let absence create the reflection space that criticism never could. This isn't passive-aggressive, this is strategic positioning. You're letting consequences teach what your words couldn't. Authenticity isn't raw emotion, it's aligned action. When you communicate strategically while maintaining your values, that's authentic power. You're not betraying yourself, you're protecting yourself from social penalties that serve no one. You'll know Tier 2 is working when people start asking your questions more. When you notice less pushback on your ideas, when people start implementing exactly what you suggested without you having to argue for it. Week 3 through 4, REN, relational cultivation, building infrastructure. Connection practice. Reach out to 3 contacts weekly with no ask, no agenda, just genuine connection. Thought of you when I saw this article. How's that project going? Haven't talked in a while, wanted to check in. Build relationship capital through generosity. You're depositing before you ever need to withdraw. Generosity exercise. Share credit publicly. When someone helps you, acknowledge them specifically. When you see 2 people who should know each other, introduce them. When a colleague does good work, praise them in front of others. Become the connector. Become the person who makes things happen for others. This feels counterintuitive if you're used to competing. You're not competing anymore. You're building infrastructure. Your instincts about relational intelligence were correct. Now you have a philosophical framework to trust them. Western culture taught you to dismiss your natural relational skills as weakness. Confucius taught emperors those same skills were civilization-building power. Trust the 2,500-year-old wisdom over the culture that penalizes your strengths. Notice the shift. By week 4, people start seeking your advice, your perspective, your endorsement, your introduction. This is REN emerging. You didn't demand this influence. You cultivated relationships until influence became inevitable. Obstacle navigation. Guilt about being strategic, normal. Conditioning told you nice girls don't strategize. Confucius told leaders that strategy rooted in moral character is virtue. Choose the philosopher over the patriarchy. Impatience for results. Week 2, you'll notice people listening differently. Week 4, opportunities appear without asking. But real REN cultivation takes years. You're starting a long-term practice, not executing a hack. Fear of inauthenticity. If your strategy violates your values, that's manipulation. If your strategy protects your values while navigating social reality, that's wisdom. Know the difference. You have the philosophy, you have the implementation plan. Now you need to understand what happens when you actually do this and why most women who discover this path never want to go back to Western approaches.
You just completed philosophical education most women never access. That puts you in the top 2% already. But knowing without community, that's lonely. Let's fix that. You started this video exhausted by Western approaches that trigger backlash. You're ending it with a 2,500-year-old strategic framework that works with your natural strengths instead of against them. You are now part of women who seek wisdom, not tactics. That's rare. That's powerful. Here's what I need from you. If you're implementing Tier 1 this week, Junzi self-cultivation, like this video. If you're focusing on Tier 2, Li strategic positioning, comment strategic. If you're working on Tier 3, Ren relational cultivation, comment relational. Let's see our community distribution. This comment section isn't just engagement, it's your philosophical discussion space. Subscribe for next week. Marcus Aurelius and Stoic Emotional Mastery for Women. How ancient Roman philosophy teaches you to become emotionally untouchable in relationships. You'll want this. This is video 1 of a 10-week philosophical female empowerment series. Nietzsche on the Übermensch, Seneca on Stoic attraction, Machiavelli on strategic power. Each philosopher gives you a different lens on female influence. Don't miss any. Hit the notification bell. YouTube only shows this content to 10% of subscribers unless you do. That's not me, that's the algorithm. You didn't invest 30 minutes to miss the rest. Most women never graduate past pop psychology. You're here studying Confucius. You chose 30 minutes of philosophy over 30 seconds of tactics. That decision alone separates you from 98% of women online. Welcome to the 2%. The women who master this, they don't argue anymore. They don't compete. They influence. And they're unstoppable. That's your path now.